The Medicaid clerk's face went pale as she stared at her computer screen. Her fingers froze above the keyboard, and for a moment, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead seemed unbearably loud. "Miss Brooks," she said quietly, lowering her voice as if afraid the words themselves might cause damage. "According to this record, you passed away in 1990. I blinked, certain I had misheard her. "My name is Aaliyah Renee Brooks, and I was very much alive, sitting in a cramped government office with cracked linoleum floors and plastic chairs that groaned under your weight. My hands were rough, scarred from years of warehouse shifts and factory work, clutching a folder of expired insurance papers like they were the last proof that I existed. Around me, other people waited their turn, eyes fixed on their phones or the floor, unaware that my entire life was quietly unraveling one sentence at a time. "That's not possible," I said, leaning forward. "I've used that Social Security number since I was 18. Every job, every tax form." Before we go on, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I really do read every comment. The clerk, Sharon Lewis, a woman with tired eyes behind thin glasses, swallowed hard and typed again. Slower this time. Her expression shifted from confusion to something closer to fear. She glanced at me, then at the screen, then reached for her phone with hands that trembled just enough for me to notice. I was 32 years old, recently laid off, down to my last $52, and apparently, according to the government, I did not exist. Or worse, I existed as someone who had been dead for more than 3 decades. Behind me, memories stirred. The ghost of Patricia Dawson, my stepmother, standing in the doorway all those years ago, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes cold. "You are not my blood," she had said more times than I could count, "and you never will be." Patricia married my mother, Denise Brooks, when I was 8 years old, 2 years after the man I believed was my father died in a trucking accident. From the first day I moved into her house, she made one thing painfully clear. I was an inconvenience she had inherited, not a child she had chosen. Her biological daughter, Brianna, got new clothes, birthday parties, and warm smiles. I got silence, secondhand shoes, and reminders to stay out of the way. Patricia never raised a hand to me. She didn't have to. Every look, every dismissive sigh told me exactly where I stood. The morning I turned 18, my bags were waiting by the door. Now, sitting in that Medicaid office with my world tilting off its axis, I realized something chilling. Being thrown out at 18 for not being blood was nothing compared to what I was about to learn. Because the life I had fought so hard to build might not have been mine at all. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the peeling walls of the office. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. A printer jammed. Life went on for everyone else, while mine quietly came apart. "Miss Brooks," Sharon Lewis said carefully, "I need you to stay seated for a moment." "What is this about?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. A security guard near the exit shifted his stance, hand hovering close to his radio. "If there's a problem with my paperwork, I can come back another day." She shook her head slowly. "It's not a paperwork issue." She turned her monitor slightly away from me, but not before I saw it. Red warning text. Symbols I had never seen before. Not normal. Not routine. "The Social Security number you've been using," she continued, lowering her voice, "was flagged internationally in the mid-1990s. Internationally. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's impossible. I've had this number since I got my first job. Grocery store, night shifts, minimum wage. Nobody ever said anything." Sharon picked up her phone, hesitated, then set it back down. Her eyes softened, and that somehow made everything worse. "It belongs to a child?" she said, "who was reported deceased in a trucking accident in 1990, along with her father." The room tilted. "My father died in a trucking accident," I said automatically. The words were muscle memory, rehearsed 1,000 times. But that was 1997. I was 6. I remember the funeral. Sharon inhaled slowly. The child in this record was 3. Something cold slid down my spine. Before I could respond, a tall man in a dark suit appeared beside her desk. He looked like someone who had spent his life navigating rules and consequences. Late 50s, calm posture, sharp eyes. "Thomas Grant," he said briefly, glancing at Sharon's screen. His expression shifted. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked disturbingly close to awe. "Dear God," he whispered. He straightened instantly. "Lock her file. Do not call anyone else. I need to make a very specific phone call." "What's happening?" I demanded, rising from the chair. "I haven't done anything wrong." "No one's accusing you of anything," he said quickly, holding up a hand. "But you need to understand that what we're seeing here, it changes everything." He studied my face like it held answers I didn't know I had. "Miss Brooks," he said slowly, "is that the name you've always gone by?" "Yes," I snapped. "Since birth. My mother is Denise Brooks. My father died when I was a child." "When exactly?" "September," I said. 1997, highway accident, storm. His truck jackknifed. Thomas wrote something down, his pen precise and steady. "How old were you?" 6, almost 7. "And your memories from before that age?" The question caught me off guard. "I remember things. Our apartment, a yellow kitchen, my mother singing." My father's laugh. "Are those memories clear?" he asked gently. "Or do they feel distant?" I hesitated. They felt real, but fuzzy, like photographs left too long in the sun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I looked down, and my breath caught as I read the message. "Stay where you are. Your real mother has been searching for you for 32 years. Signed, Agent Keisha Monroe, FBI Missing Children Division." The words blurred as my vision filled. I wasn't dead, but the girl I thought I was might never have existed at all. My hands were shaking as I showed the message to Thomas Grant. He read it once, then again, his jaw tightening. "I just got off the phone with the federal building," he said quietly. "They're already mobilizing." Sharon Lewis looked like she might faint. "FBI? Over a Medicaid application?" "This stopped being about Medicaid the moment that number came up," Thomas said. "Miss Brooks, I need you to understand something very clearly. No one here believes you committed a crime. But the identity you've been living under belongs to a child who died more than 3 decades ago." I sank back into the plastic chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "That doesn't make sense," I whispered. "I have a birth certificate, school records, medical files, a whole life." "All built on that same identity," Thomas replied. "An identity created before you were old enough to question it." Sharon finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Is that even her real name?" I swallowed hard. "Aaliyah Renee Brooks. It's the only name I've ever known." Thomas pulled a chair and sat across from me, lowering himself to my level. "I need you to think carefully. Tell me about your earliest memory, not stories you were told, something you remember." I closed my eyes. A yellow kitchen, sunlight on the walls, a woman humming while stirring something on the stove, the smell of coffee. Safety. But when I tried to focus on faces, on details, They slipped away like smoke. I don't remember friends, I admitted. Not really. My mother always said we moved a lot. Before or after your father died? Before, I said automatically, then froze. No, that doesn't make sense. Thomas nodded slowly. That's the inconsistency. My phone buzzed again. Federal Building, East Lincoln Avenue, 5th floor. Your biological parents are flying in from Tulsa. They have been searching since 1991. I stared at the screen until the words felt unreal. My real parents? I asked. Thomas exhaled. According to the FBI, yes. The room felt too small, the air too thin. What about my mother? I asked. Denise, where is she? Thomas checked his phone. She was located earlier today, living under the name Angela Watkins. She's in custody. The words landed like a physical blow. In custody? For what? For kidnapping, he said gently. A warrant issued in 1991. My chest tightened. Memories shifted, reassembling themselves with horrifying clarity. Denise holding me too tightly. Her eyes always searching my face. The way she panicked whenever I got sick or hurt. The total absence of baby photos before a certain age. She stole me, I said, the words tasting wrong in my mouth. Thomas nodded. And raised you as a replacement for a child she lost. Another memory surfaced. Patricia Dawson's cold stare. Her hatred. Her insistence that I was not her blood. She knew, I said suddenly. That's why she hated me. According to the FBI, Thomas replied, Patricia found out when you were 17. Denise confessed, begged her not to report it until you were legally an adult. So she waited, I said bitterly, then threw me out. Yes, he said. She believed she was protecting you by forcing independence. I laughed once, sharp and hollow. She destroyed me instead. Thomas stood. Agent Monroe will explain everything. Your real name, your real family. I rose on unsteady legs. I don't know who I am, I said. You're about to, he replied. And somewhere in Tulsa, people who had never stopped loving me were boarding a plane, finally coming to meet the daughter they thought they'd lost forever. 2 hours later, I sat in a Federal Building conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. The walls were bare except for a flag and a clock that ticked too loudly, counting down seconds I wasn't ready to face. Across the table sat Agent Keisha Monroe, calm, composed, her voice steady in a way that made it clear she had delivered impossible truths before. Aaliyah, she began gently, then paused. We'll use that name for now, until you tell us otherwise. I nodded, my hands folded tightly in my lap. She spread photographs across the table like a deck of cards. Your real name is Nia Jordan Ellis. The name hit me harder than I expected. It felt foreign, heavy, like clothing that hadn't been worn in decades, but still belonged to me. You were born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in March of 1991. Agent Monroe continued. You were 6 months old when you were taken. She slid the first photo toward me. A young woman held a baby, her smile wide and joyful. Her eyes were green, not just green, but my green. Same shade, same small fleck of gold near the left iris. My breath caught. That's your biological mother, Agent Monroe said softly. Monique Ellis. I picked up the photo with shaking hands. The baby could have been any baby. But the woman looked like me in a way that Denise never had. Another photo followed. A man standing beside her, one arm around her shoulders, the other resting protectively near the baby. Darnell Ellis, Agent Monroe said. Your father. Then another photo. A little boy, maybe 3 years old, smiling proudly at the camera. That's your brother, she said. Malik Ellis. He was born 3 years after you disappeared. I stared at the images, my chest tight, my thoughts spinning. How? My voice cracked. How did I disappear? Agent Monroe pulled out a police report. September of 1991. A grocery store parking lot. Your mother was loading groceries when a woman approached her asking for directions. While she was distracted, you were taken from the shopping cart. It took less than 30 seconds. 30 seconds? That was all it took to erase an entire life and replace it with another. The woman seen carrying you away, Agent Monroe said, tapping the page, was Denise Brooks. She had lost her own child the year before. Images of Denise flooded my mind. Her grief, her fear, her desperation masquerading as love. She used her deceased child's identity to raise you, Agent Monroe continued. Moved frequently, changed details, repeated the story until it became your truth. And my memories? I asked. Of being 6 when my father died? Fabricated, she said gently. Not intentionally on your part. Children accept the narratives they're given. Over time, the brain fills in gaps. I leaned back in the chair, dizzy. So everything I thought I knew, I whispered, was built to protect a lie, she finished. But not to erase you. She tapped her tablet, then turned it toward me. On the screen was a woman in her late 50s, tear-streaked face, trembling hands, eyes burning with hope. This is Monique Ellis, Agent Monroe said. Today. I stared at the screen, something deep inside me cracking open. She never stopped looking, the agent added. Not for a single day. And for the first time in my life, I wondered what it would feel like to be someone's missing child, instead of someone's mistake. They're here, Agent Keisha Monroe said quietly, locking her tablet and standing. They arrived less than an hour ago. My stomach dropped. Here, as in this building? She nodded. Next room. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't know if I can do this. That's okay, she said calmly. You don't owe anyone anything. This meeting is for you, not for them. But even as she said it, I knew that wasn't true. Somewhere on the other side of that wall were 2 people who had spent 32 years living with an empty space shaped exactly like me. I don't remember them, I said, hating how cold it sounded. What if I look at them and feel nothing? Agent Monroe met my eyes. Then that's still honest, and honesty is the only thing this story hasn't had. She walked to the door and paused, her hand on the handle. There's one more thing you should know before you meet them. I waited. Your stepmother, Patricia Dawson, contacted us this morning, after Denise was arrested. My jaw tightened. What did she say? She admitted she knew the truth for about a year before you turned 18. Denise confessed while intoxicated. Patricia was going to report it immediately, but Denise begged her to wait. She said she didn't want your world to collapse while you were still a minor. So instead, I said bitterly, she waited until my birthday and threw me out. Agent Monroe nodded. In her mind, forcing independence was safer than the truth. She believed she was sparing you trauma. She destroyed my life, I said. I spent 15 years thinking I was disposable. She'll have to live with that, the agent replied gently. You don't. She opened the door. The room beyond was quiet. Too quiet. A woman stood just inside, frozen in place. She was smaller than I expected, barely over 5 feet tall, her hands shaking as they hovered near her chest. Tears streamed freely down her face, unchecked and unashamed. My baby, she whispered. My girl. My legs locked. Behind her stood a man, tall and solid, gripping the back of a chair like he needed it to stay upright. His eyes were red. His mouth trembled. "Nia," he said hoarsely. "We never stopped looking. Not for one day." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. "I don't remember you," I finally said. "I'm sorry. I was 6 months old." Monique Ellis stepped forward slowly, as if afraid I might vanish if she moved too fast. She raised one hand and stopped, waiting for permission. I nodded. Her fingers brushed my cheek, light as air. "You have your grandmother's eyes," she said through a sob. "I always wondered if you would." Then she wrapped her arms around me, and something inside my chest cracked open. I didn't know her. I didn't recognize her voice or her scent. But my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I hugged her back. Darnell Ellis joined us, his arms strong and steady, and suddenly I was surrounded by something unfamiliar and overwhelming. Belonging. In the doorway behind them stood a man about my age, watching quietly. Same build, same hands, same eyes. "My name's Malik," he said softly. "I've been waiting to meet my big sister my whole life." For the first time, the name Nia didn't feel foreign. It felt like it had been waiting for me. The first few minutes blurred together. I remembered Monique's arms around me, the way she kept whispering my name like saying it enough times might anchor me to the room. I remembered Darnell's hand on my shoulder, solid and grounding, like he was afraid I might drift away if he let go. And I remembered Malik standing there, unsure whether to step closer or give me space, carrying 3 decades of expectation in his eyes. "We don't want to overwhelm you," Monique said finally, pulling back just enough to look at my face. Her hands lingered, reluctant to let go. "We know this is a lot." A lot didn't even begin to cover it. We sat. Someone brought water. No one touched it. "I need to say something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I don't know who I am yet. I don't know how to be your daughter or your sister." Darnell nodded slowly. "We're not asking you to be anything today." Monique reached across the table but stopped halfway, letting me decide. I placed my hand in hers. "We just want time," she said. "Whatever you're willing to give." Time. I had spent my whole life surviving one day at a time. The idea of having time given to me felt unreal. Agent Monroe quietly excused herself, leaving us alone. Malik cleared his throat. "I grew up knowing about you," he said. "Not in a sad way, just normal. You were always there, even when you weren't." I frowned slightly. "How?" He smiled, small and nervous. "They talked about you. Every birthday, there was a cake. An empty chair. Mom said it wasn't sad. She said it was faith." Monique laughed softly through tears. "I told him a mother knows." My chest tightened. I thought of my birthdays growing up. Grocery store cake, no candles, no songs, just survival. "We kept your room," Darnell said quietly. "I wanted to change it after 10 years. Thought maybe it was hurting us more than helping." "But I wouldn't let him," Monique added. "I knew you'd come home." The words hit me harder than any accusation ever had. Home. After a while, Agent Monroe returned. "We'll keep things slow," she said. "Counseling is available. Legal steps can wait. You don't have to decide anything today." I nodded. "Thank you." As we stood to leave, Monique hesitated. "May I ask, what name would you like us to use?" I looked at her, at Darnell, at Malik. "Aaliyah is who I've been," I said carefully. "Nia is who I was." I took a breath. "For now, you can call me Aaliyah." Monique smiled, nodding. "Whatever you need, baby. We'll learn you all over again." As we walked out of the conference room together, I realized something that terrified and comforted me all at once. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking alone. 3 months later, I stood in a quiet house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, staring at a room that had been waiting for me my entire life. "This was your nursery," Monique said softly from the doorway. The walls were pale yellow, the kind of color meant to feel warm and safe. A hand-painted alphabet border ran along the top, each letter carefully outlined. In the corner stood a crib, untouched by time, a small teddy bear still tucked neatly against one side. "I couldn't change it," she admitted. "Darnell wanted to after 10 years, said it might help us heal, but I just knew you'd come back." I ran my fingers along the crib rail, my throat tight. 32 years, an entire lifetime, and this room had remained frozen, waiting for a baby who never came home. In the closet hung tiny dresses and sweaters, still wrapped in plastic, labels yellowed with age. I imagined Monique standing here decades ago, folding them with care, believing she'd need them any day now. "This is why we moved here," Malik said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. "Mom said if you ever came back, she wanted you to have roots." The Ellis house felt nothing like the one I'd grown up in. Family photos covered every surface. Not just Malik's childhood, but dozens of age progression images of me. At 5, at 10, at 15, at 20. Every version of the woman I might have been. "They celebrated your birthday every year," Malik told me later as we sat at the kitchen table. "Cake, candles. Even when it was just us." I swallowed hard. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because Mom said you were alive, and if you're alive, you celebrate." That night, lying in a bed that should have been mine all along, I thought about Denise, about the woman who raised me, about how tightly she'd held me, how afraid she always seemed of losing me. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison for kidnapping. When Agent Monroe told me, I didn't know how to feel. Relief, anger, grief, all tangled together. "She lost her son," the agent had said gently, and made a choice that destroyed multiple lives. I thought of Patricia Dawson next. She received probation for failing to report the crime after learning the truth. When the news broke, Brianna reached out. "I always wondered why my mom treated you that way," she said when we met for coffee. "Now I understand. She was afraid, not of you, of the truth. We were trying to build something like a sisterhood. Slow, careful, complicated. The biggest surprise came from Evelyn Brooks, the woman who believed she was my grandmother for nearly 3 decades. "I don't care what DNA says," she told Monique, gripping my hand. "I loved this girl for 27 years. That makes her mine, too." Monique smiled through tears and pulled her into a hug. For the first time, I understood something I'd missed my whole life. Family wasn't about whose blood rejected you. It was about who never stopped claiming you. Healing did not come all at once. It came in small, uneven pieces scattered across ordinary days. Some mornings, I woke up in Tulsa disoriented, reaching for a life that no longer existed. Other mornings, I woke up calm, almost hopeful, before the weight of everything settled back onto my chest. Monique never pushed. She learned my rhythms the way a mother learns a newborn's, patient and observant. The Hayes Family Center for Missing Children was attached to a modest brick building near downtown. Monique had started it with nothing but grief, determination, and a folding table. Over 3 decades, it had grown into something real. Bulletin boards covered the walls, layered with flyers, photographs, timelines, and handwritten notes from families who refused to give up. "This is where I spent most of my childhood," Malik told me as he showed me around. "Not because Mom made me, because I wanted to help." I paused in front of a wall filled with faces. Hundreds of them, children frozen in time. Do they all come home? I asked quietly. No, he said honestly. But some do, and sometimes one is enough to keep going. I started volunteering a few days a week. At first, I just answered phones, filed paperwork, made coffee, simple things, safe things. But families would look at me differently once they heard my story. Not with pity, with hope. If she came back, maybe my child can too. One afternoon, while organizing old case files, I found something unexpected. A familiar number written in faded ink on a report from the early 1990s. The grocery store where I had been taken. They had been close. Painfully close. One witness saw a woman carrying a baby to a van, but didn't think it mattered. A security guard noticed the vehicle, but never wrote down the license plate. One interview, one detail. One person speaking up could have changed everything. That realization stayed with me. Aaron's life had moved on while mine stood still. Malik owned a small construction company now, built from the ground up. One evening, sitting on the back porch, he looked at me and said, "You want to work with me?" "I've done warehouse work my whole life," I said. "That's not exactly a resume." He grinned. "You're my sister. That's enough to start." Working beside him felt strangely natural. Same work ethic. Same stubborn streak. Same hands, scarred in the same places for different reasons. He teased me constantly, made up for decades of silence with noise and laughter. Weekends became family dinners. No assigned seats. No counting who belonged more. Darnell taught me how to restore an old car. Monique learned how I took my coffee. Small things. Real things. On my desk at the foundation sat a framed bill, $52. The last money I had before everything changed. Rock bottom, I learned, can sometimes be a doorway, and I had walked through it into a life I never knew was waiting. The more I learned about my own case, the harder it became to ignore how close I had come to never being found. One afternoon, Agent Keisha Monroe sat across from me at the foundation. A thick file opened between us. The pages were worn, corners bent from being handled too many times. "They reopened your case 3 separate times," she said. "Each time, they were one interview away from identifying Denise." I stared at the file. 3 times? She nodded. Once a store employee remembered a woman acting strangely but didn't think it was important enough to report. Another time, a witness recalled the van but assumed someone else had already followed up. Small decisions, human ones. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. 32 years of separation, balanced on moments where someone hesitated. "That's why your story matters," Agent Monroe continued. "People think speaking up might cause trouble, but silence causes more." That idea followed me everywhere. When Monique asked if I would speak at a fundraiser for the center, my first instinct was to say no. "I'm not a speaker," I told her. "I'm barely holding myself together." She smiled gently. "You don't have to be polished. You just have to be real." The room was full the night I spoke. Families, volunteers, law enforcement, parents holding photos of children whose smiles felt painfully familiar. My hand shook as I stepped to the microphone. "I spent 32 years believing I wasn't wanted," I said. I was told I wasn't anyone's blood. What I didn't know was that someone had been searching for me every single day of that time. I told them about the grocery store, about the missed chances, about the clerk who didn't ignore a red flag. "If you see something," I said, my voice steady now, "say something. That feeling in your gut might be the reason someone gets to come home." Afterward, a woman approached me, tears in her eyes, clutching a worn photograph. "My son's been gone 8 years," she said. Tonight, you gave me hope. That night, I cried harder than I had since the reunion. Not from pain alone, but from purpose. Work with Malik continued to ground me. He pushed me hard, teased me harder, and treated me like I had always been there. One evening, as we packed up tools, he looked at me and said, "You know, I used to talk to your picture." I laughed softly. "What did you say?" "That when you came back," he replied, "I'd teach you everything I knew." I realized then that while my past had been stolen, my future was wide open. I had lived as a ghost of a child who died long ago. Now, I was learning how to live as a woman who survived. And for the first time, the truth didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a beginning. The legal process moved slowly, deliberately, as if the system itself understood how fragile everything still felt. Paperwork, court dates, DNA confirmations that had already been decided by a glance in the mirror. I signed documents with hands that no longer shook, even when the words on the page confirmed what my heart was still learning to accept. Name change petitions sat unsigned on my desk for weeks. "Aaliyah is who you survived as," Monique said one evening as we washed dishes together. "Nia is who you were born as. You don't have to choose yet." That patience was new to me. My entire life before had been about deadlines and ultimatums. Be useful or be gone. Earn your place or lose it. Here, no one rushed me. I started therapy at the foundation with a counselor who specialized in identity trauma. Some sessions were quiet. Others left me raw and exhausted. "You were raised in survival mode," she told me once. "Now you're being asked to live in safety. That takes time." Safety felt strange, even uncomfortable. I caught myself flinching when voices raised in laughter, apologizing for things that weren't my fault, asking permission to exist in rooms where everyone wanted me there. Monique noticed everything. One afternoon, she stopped me as I reached for my purse. "You don't have to earn dinner," she said gently. "You belong here." The words hit me harder than any courtroom verdict ever could. News coverage of the case spread quickly. Interviews were requested. Headlines written by people who had never known my fear or my nights sleeping in my car after being thrown out. I declined most of them. One article quoted Patricia Dawson. She said she had done what she thought was best, that she believed forcing me to leave had made me stronger. I folded the paper and set it aside. Strength built on abandonment is not a gift. It's a scar. Brianna and I met occasionally. Our conversations were careful, honest, awkward. Neither of us pretended things were simple. "I lost my mom too," she admitted once, just in a different way. I nodded. We both lost something. We just didn't get to choose. Slowly, the anger that had fueled me for years began to loosen its grip. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because I no longer needed it to survive. At the construction site, Malik handed me a set of keys one morning. "What's this?" I asked. "Our first joint project," he said. "Felt wrong not to put your name on it." I stared at the keys, then at him. For the first time, my name meant possibility instead of paperwork, and somewhere between concrete dust, counseling sessions, and family dinners that stretched late into the night, I began to understand something simple and profound. I wasn't rebuilding a stolen life. I was building a new one, with truth as its foundation. The day I finally signed the paperwork, my hands didn't shake. The name change documents lay on the table in front of me, crisp and official. Ink waited patiently at the bottom of the page. "You don't have to do this today," Darnell said gently from across the room. "Or ever." "I know," I replied, and I meant it. I stared at the line where my new name would live. Nia Jordan Ellis. It didn't erase Aaliyah. It didn't invalidate the years I had survived under another identity. It simply told the truth. I signed. It felt less like becoming someone new and more like stepping fully into myself. The court hearing was quiet. No drama, no speeches. Just a judge who looked at me kindly and said, "Welcome home, Ms. Ellis." Afterward, Monique cried in the hallway. Malik hugged me so hard my ribs ached. Darnell squeezed my shoulder and said nothing, which somehow said everything. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Triggers still caught me off guard. Certain smells, certain tones of voice. The sight of packed bags near a door could still make my heart race. But now, when that happened, I wasn't alone. One evening, sitting on the back steps with Monique, I asked the question I had been avoiding. "Did you ever hate her?" I asked. "Denise." Monique was quiet for a long moment. "I hated what she did," she said carefully. "But I also see the woman who lost her child, and broken ways no one helped her heal." "That doesn't excuse it," I said. "No," she agreed. "But understanding helps me breathe." I thought of Denise in prison, of Patricia living with the choices she made, of the years that could never be returned. And I realized something unexpected. Forgiveness wasn't about letting anyone off the hook. It was about setting myself down. The foundation continued to grow. New volunteers, new cases, some reunions, some heartbreaks. Every success felt personal. Every loss reminded me why the work mattered. One afternoon, a young girl came in with her aunt. Recently recovered, quiet, watchful. I saw myself in her eyes. I knelt down in front of her and said softly, "You're safe now. You don't have to be strong anymore." She leaned into me without a word. In that moment, everything aligned. The pain, the past, the purpose. I hadn't just been found. I had been prepared. As months passed, my story stopped feeling like an emergency and started feeling like a responsibility. Not a burden, a calling. The Hayes Family Center became more than a place I volunteered. It became where my past and future met in a way that finally made sense. I started sitting in on intake meetings, helping families fill out forms, translating fear into steps. I knew that fear. I had lived inside it. One case in particular stayed with me. A mother named Rochelle, her son missing for nearly 4 years. She sat across from me, gripping a photograph so tightly her knuckles were white. "Everyone tells me to accept it," she whispered. "But I can't." I looked her in the eyes. "Don't," I said. "Not yet." She cried then, deep, shaking sobs, the kind that come from being seen instead of dismissed. That night, Monique watched me quietly as I typed notes at the kitchen table. "You're different lately," she said. "I think I finally understand why I survived," I replied. She nodded, like she'd known all along. At the construction site, Malik noticed the change too. I worked with more confidence now, less like I was bracing for the ground to disappear beneath me. "You walk like you belong somewhere," he teased one afternoon. "I do," I said, and it was true. News about my case continued to circulate online. Messages poured in from strangers, some grateful, some angry, some desperate for answers I couldn't give. One message stood out. A woman wrote that she had seen something years ago, a moment that didn't sit right. She never reported it. She carried that guilt every day. I wrote back. "You didn't fail forever," I told her. "You failed once. What matters is what you do next." She later became a volunteer. Healing, I learned, isn't linear. Some days I felt whole. Other days I felt like a patchwork of timelines that didn't quite align. But even on the hardest days, I no longer questioned my worth. I wasn't someone who had been tolerated. I was someone who had been searched for. And that truth rewired everything. The truth about my past didn't just change how I saw myself. It changed how I saw the world. I began noticing how easily people dismissed small moments. How often someone said, "It's probably nothing," instead of asking one more question. I used to be one of those people. I had learned early that survival meant not drawing attention. Now I knew attention could save lives. When I was invited to speak at a regional training for store employees and security staff, my first instinct was to refuse. Standing in front of strangers still made my skin prickle with old fear. But Monique squeezed my hand. "This is how we turn pain into prevention," she said. So I stood at the podium and told them about a grocery store parking lot in 1991. About a woman asking for directions. About a cart left unattended for seconds. "One person noticed something," I said, "and thought someone else would handle it. That's how 32 years disappear." The room was silent. Afterward, a man approached me, his voice tight. "I've ignored that feeling before," he admitted. "I won't again." That was enough. At home, life settled into a rhythm that still felt miraculous. Sunday dinners, loud conversations, Malik arguing with Darnell about tools, Monique texting me reminders to eat. One night, as we cleaned up after dinner, I found myself laughing freely. No edge, no restraint, just sound. I froze, startled by it. Monique noticed. "What?" "I didn't know I could feel like this," I said, without waiting for it to be taken away. She cupped my face gently. "That's what safety feels like." Brianna and I made progress too. Slow, imperfect progress. We talked about childhood, about how silence in a house can be louder than shouting. "I don't expect forgiveness," she told me once. "I just want honesty." "That's all I can offer," I said, and it was enough to keep trying. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who packed her bags at 18 and walked into the world believing she was alone. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her the truth. You are not unwanted. You are missing. And you are loved beyond measure. I couldn't change her past, but I could honor her survival. And every day I did. There was one thing I hadn't done yet. I hadn't gone back to the place where everything changed. The grocery store was still there, renovated, but recognizable. New paint, new signage, same parking lot. I stood across the street one quiet morning, my hands tucked into my jacket pockets, heart pounding like I was about to meet a ghost. Monique stayed in the car. "Take your time," she said. "I'll be right here." I walked slowly across the asphalt, counting steps I had never taken as an adult. Somewhere near the third row of parking spaces, a young mother was loading groceries into her trunk. Her baby sat in the cart, kicking happily. My breath caught. She noticed me watching and smiled politely. I smiled back, then forced myself to look away. This wasn't my moment to intrude. It was my moment to remember. 32 years ago, my life had been lifted out of a cart like an object someone thought they needed more than the person it belonged to. No malice in the moment, just a choice made in grief. I didn't feel anger standing there. I felt clarity. I went back to the car and sat quietly for a while. Monique didn't speak. She didn't need to. That night, I added a new line to my speeches. Evil doesn't always look violent, I told audiences. Sometimes it looks desperate. That's why awareness matters. The foundation launched a new campaign soon after. Training. Posters. Simple language. Trust your instincts. Speak up. One report matters. We found 15 children that year. 15 families made whole. At home, Malik teased me about becoming the serious one. Darnell called me his anchor. Monique just watched me with a quiet pride that still made my chest ache. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip low, Monique said, "Do you ever wish things had been different?" I thought carefully before answering. "Yes," I said, "but I don't wish I was someone else." She smiled. Neither did I. The $52 I had in my wallet the day I walked into that Medicaid office now sits framed on my desk at the foundation. It's not there because of the money. It's there because that was the moment everything broke open. I walked in, believing I was a failure who had finally run out of options. I walked out knowing I had been missing, not abandoned. Searched for, not discarded. Loved in ways I couldn't remember, but could finally feel. If you listened all the way to the end, thank you. It truly means more to me than you know. Before we wrap up, go ahead and like this video and share it if the story blessed you. I spent 32 years living as Aaliyah Renee Brooks, carrying the weight of a name built on loss. I was told I was not my stepmother's blood, never realizing I was someone else's blood entirely. Blood that never stopped calling my name. Now, I live as Nia Jordan Ellis, a daughter, a sister, a woman with a past that hurts and a future that heals. Sometimes the worst day of your life is just the day the truth finally finds you. Sometimes losing everything is how you learn what was always meant to be yours. I wasn't nobody's blood. I was somebody's everything. And they waited 32 years to say one word to me. Welcome home. For another story that fits your mood, click the video on the left. To hear the latest one, choose the video on the right.
I mistakenly sat in my sister-in-law Sable's chair at a family gathering. The moment she saw me, her face turned red with anger. She stormed over, glaring at me, and without warning, she slapped me hard across the face in front of everyone. My cheeks burned, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation of it happening with my whole family watching. My brother Merrick, who I always thought would have my back, shocked me by siding with her instead. In that instant, something inside me broke. I wanted revenge, and I decided to call the police to report the incident. But just before the police arrived, something unexpected happened. Something that completely changed how I saw the situation. My name is Lyra. I'm 25 years old and work as a marketing specialist in Dallas, Texas. I've always loved the city, with its busy streets, vibrant art, and close-knit community that makes you feel like you're part of something special. I have a cozy apartment here, and my job keeps me on my toes. I'm proud of the work I do, but even more than my job, the most important relationship in my life has always been with my younger brother, Merrick. Growing up, Merrick and I were like two peas in a pod. He was the little brother I'd always wanted, and we spent hours together in our own little world, building forts out of blankets, exploring the backyard, and creating imaginary adventures. As he got older, our bond grew even stronger. I never thought anything could come between us, not even when he started dating. When Merrick first introduced me to Sable, his girlfriend, I was genuinely happy for him. She seemed perfect for him, charming, funny, and engaging. I remember the day we first met her. It was at a family barbecue. Merrick's face lit up every time he talked to her, and I couldn't help but feel happy for him. "Lyra, you're going to love her," he had told me with so much excitement. "She's amazing." And that night, Sable lived up to everything Merrick had said. She had a way about her that drew people in. We laughed and shared stories, and for a while, I thought I had found a new friend. I felt so warm and content, knowing my brother was with someone who made him happy. But as time went by, things changed. At first, I brushed off my unease, thinking it was just me adjusting to sharing Merrick with someone else. However, Sable soon began to show a different side, one that was far from the warm, friendly person I'd met. During family gatherings, she'd make little remarks that stung. At first, I thought I was being overly sensitive, but her comments kept coming, and they weren't so innocent. One Thanksgiving, I brought my special pumpkin pie, a family recipe from our grandmother that I'd spent hours perfecting. When it was time for dessert, Sable looked at me with a smirk and said, "Oh, I thought I was supposed to bring dessert this year." She said it in a light tone, like it was no big deal, but her words made me feel embarrassed in front of everyone. I forced a smile and replied, "Must have slipped my mind," but I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. As the months went on, her comments only grew sharper. One evening at dinner, she turned to me with a smirk and said, "Still single, Lyra? You should really try dating someone. It might help with your personality." Her words felt like a slap to my confidence. I tried to laugh it off, pretending it didn't bother me, but inside it hurt. I started feeling more and more isolated, as if she was chipping away at my place in the family. One night, I opened up to my best friend, Zevin, while we were out for coffee. "Zevin, something feels wrong with Sable," I said, nervously stirring my drink. At first, I thought she was great. Now, she's just different. "Different how?" Zevin asked, looking at me closely. "She makes these comments that feel like she's insulting me, even if she says them like a joke. It's like she's trying to push me out of my own family." I felt a wave of frustration rise as I spoke. "Have you told Merrick about it?" he asked. I hesitated, thinking of how deeply Merrick cared about her. "I don't want to cause any problems. He's so happy with her." Zevin looked at me seriously. "Lyra, you deserve to feel safe and respected around your family. Don't just brush this off." I knew he was right, but I dreaded the thought of confronting Merrick about it. So I let things slide, hoping Sable's behavior would change. But it didn't, it only got worse. She started interfering in my relationship with Merrick, deleting messages he sent to me or conveniently forgetting to tell me about family events. I felt like she was erasing me from his life, piece by piece. Then came the day at the family gathering, where I unknowingly sat in her chair. That one simple action was enough to send her into a fit of anger. When she slapped me, I felt like everything I'd held back came crashing down. I decided I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I was ready to involve the police, to stand up for myself and make sure she faced consequences. But before the police could arrive, something happened. Something that turned my plan for revenge into a moment of reflection. I was beginning to feel like I was losing my brother, and the worst part was that I didn't know how to stop it. Things finally came to a breaking point during another family dinner at our parents' house. I arrived early to help set up, wanting to make things smooth and enjoy some family time. As everyone gathered, I found a chair and sat down, not thinking much of it. Then Sable walked in and froze when she saw me in that chair. Her face twisted with anger. "Excuse me, that's my seat," she snapped. I blinked, confused. "I didn't realize there was a specific spot for you," I replied. Her eyes narrowed, and suddenly the whole room felt tense. "It's always been my spot. You should know that by now." Her voice was full of irritation, and everyone else was staring, probably as uncomfortable as I was. My heart raced, and I tried to keep calm, feeling the pressure of everyone watching. "It's just a chair, Sable. Let's not make this a big deal," I said, hoping to keep things light. Even Merrick, trying to help, spoke up, "Come on, let's not make a scene." But Sable didn't back down. "No, Lyra is always trying to take everything from me. She's always trying to steal my spotlight." Her accusation felt like a punch, and I could feel my cheeks flushing. "I'm not trying to take anything," I said, my voice soft and uncertain. "I was just trying to sit down like everyone else." But before I could say much more, the tension in the room seemed to explode. I knew this moment would change everything in our family, and I realized I had to deal with it not just for me, but for Merrick too. I felt like a storm was building inside of me, ready to finally break free. After the dinner, things got chaotic. My mind kept spinning with Sable's harsh words, accusing me of trying to take everything from her. Family had always been my safe place, a space I felt supported and loved. Now it felt like it was turning into a battleground, and I didn't know why. Later, Merrick reached out to me with a text that read, "Can we talk?" Sable feels terrible about last night. I sighed, guessing he was trying to keep the peace, as he always did. I wanted to respond with something sharp, but instead I replied, "Sure, I'd like to talk too."
We met at a park that weekend.
It was a sunny day, but I felt weighed down by the situation. Merrick walked over, looking nervous, his brow creased with worry. "Lyra, I'm really sorry about what happened last night. Sable didn't mean for it to go that far," he said, looking like he wanted me to forgive her right away. I looked at him, struggling to put my feelings into words. "Merrick, it's not just about the chair. It's how she treats me. The things she says, they're hurtful." I wanted him to see the full picture, to understand why this wasn't just a small issue to me. Merrick sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I know she can be intense, but you have to understand, she's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe it would be better if we all just tried to avoid conflict." A surge of disappointment washed over me. "Merrick, avoiding it won't make it go away. I feel like she's pushing me out of your life, and I don't want that." Merrick's eyes softened, but I could see he was torn between me and Sable. "I'll talk to her," he promised. "Just give it some time." Days turned into weeks, and things didn't improve. In fact, Sable seemed even more aggressive, especially at family gatherings. One afternoon, at a barbecue, she slid up next to me with a smirk. "So, Lyra still single? You must be really picky," she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I tried to stay calm. "I'm just focused on my career right now, Sable," I replied, hoping to end the conversation. "Right, because that's working out so well for you," she shot back, laughing in a way that felt like nails scraping across a chalkboard. It was as if she wanted me to feel small and uncomfortable. After that, I started confiding in Zevin, my best friend, more and more. I felt lost, desperate for someone to help me make sense of this situation. One evening at our favorite coffee shop, the comforting smell of coffee filled the air as I stirred my drink absent-mindedly, spilling my frustrations to him. "It's like I'm walking on eggshells around her," I told him, feeling exhausted. "I feel like anything I say or do sets her off." Zevin looked at me, his face serious with concern. "Have you ever thought about looking into her past? There might be a reason for her behavior," he suggested. I hesitated, not sure how far I wanted to go with this. My mind raced with doubts, but I also knew I couldn't keep living like this, feeling like I was losing my brother and my family to this constant tension. I felt uneasy about digging into Sable's past. It seemed like an invasion of privacy, and I was worried it might just make things worse. "Sometimes, you need to understand the enemy to defend yourself," Zevin replied, his voice steady and firm. His determination radiated toward me, and, reluctantly, I began to consider the possibility. After a lot of inner conflict, I decided to look into Sable's past. It didn't take long before I found some troubling information online. I uncovered mentions of toxic relationships and even a few restraining orders filed against her by former partners. My heart pounded as I read through these details. Who was this person my brother had chosen to marry? Feeling both anxious and resolute, I decided to share what I'd found with Zevin. "She has a past that worries me," I told him. "This might explain why she's acting this way." Zevin's face grew serious as he took it all in. "Lyra, you need to confront Merrick with this information. He deserves to know who he's really dealing with." That evening, I finally found the courage to invite Merrick over for dinner. I wanted it to feel like old times, hoping the familiar warmth of our shared meals might ease the tension. When he arrived, I noticed the stress lines on his face, as if he'd been carrying a heavy burden. "Thanks for coming, Merrick. I made your favorite, chicken Alfredo," I said, smiling and trying to lighten the mood. "Thanks, Lyra. It smells great," he replied, but I could see the worry etched in his eyes. Once we sat down at the table, I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation could change everything. "Merrick, I need to talk to you about Sable again," I began, trying to keep my voice calm. His face darkened slightly. "I thought we agreed to let things cool down," he replied, sounding tired. "I wish we could just leave it," I admitted. "But I found out some things about her that really worry me." I don't think you fully understand who she is. I pressed forward, steadying my voice as best as I could. What do you mean? He asked, concern flashing across his face. I laid everything out, the toxic relationships, the restraining orders, and even the ways she'd been interfering in my own life. She's been sabotaging my career, Merrick. She's spreading rumors about me to my clients. I can't let her hurt you too. Merrick's expression shifted as he took in the weight of my words. He looked torn and a bit overwhelmed. This is a lot to process, Lyra. I don't know what to think, he muttered, his voice shaking slightly. But before he could say more, there was a loud, sudden knock at the door. My heart raced as we exchanged a worried glance. Who could that be? He asked, tension creeping into his voice. I don't know, I replied, feeling a knot form in my stomach. I sensed something bad was about to happen. As Merrick opened the door, I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Standing there was Sable, her face flushed with both anger and, surprisingly, a hint of fear. My heart sank as she pushed past Merrick, completely ignoring me. Merrick, we need to talk. Now, she demanded, her voice filled with urgency. Merrick glanced back at me, unsure. We were in the middle of a conversation, he said hesitantly. Sable whipped around to face me, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. You've been filling his head with lies, haven't you, Lyra? My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. That's not true, Sable. I'm just trying to protect him. Protect him? She sneered, her voice dripping with bitterness as she stepped closer. You mean keep him all to yourself, right? I know your type, Lyra. Enough. Merrick interrupted, his voice unsteady as he tried to regain control of the situation. Sable, let's not do this right now. But Sable wasn't backing down. Oh, I think we need to, she snapped. You're so busy listening to her nonsense. You don't even see what's really going on here. The tension was thick in the air, and I tried my best to stay calm. Sable, I'm not trying to come between you two. I just want both of you to be happy. She scoffed, crossing her arms tightly. Happy? You think you can just waltz in and dictate how our relationship should be? I'm not about to let you control our lives. I'm not trying to control anything, I replied, my voice trembling. I'm just concerned for you both. Sable stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a low, venomous growl. You think you're better than me, don't you? With your perfect job, your perfect life? Well, I'm tired of it. Her words hit like a slap, filled with so much bitterness and resentment. It was as if every suppressed emotion she had was boiling over in that moment. Merrick looked torn, glancing from me to Sable, uncertain of what to do or say. And as I stood there, facing her anger and feeling the tension from every direction, I realized that this confrontation was only the beginning. The cracks in our family were deepening, and I wasn't sure if we could find a way to fix them. I had never once thought of myself as being superior to Sable. I just wanted to be supportive, to be part of the family we were building together. I'm not trying to put you down, Sable. I want us to be a family, I said, feeling my heart race as I tried to stay calm. But Sable leaned in, her eyes fierce and filled with anger. Family? You're a threat to everything I've worked for. You've been trying to tear us apart since day one, she hissed. A surge of anger bubbled up in me. I have never tried to tear you two apart. I just want my brother to be safe, I replied, my voice shaking. But before I could finish, Sable's face twisted with rage. In a sudden, shocking move, she slapped me hard across the face. The sound of her slap echoed in the room, and I stumbled back, stunned by both the pain and the shock of what had just happened. Merrick's eyes widened in disbelief. Sable, what the hell? He shouted, clearly shocked. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting radiate through my body. Tears welled up, but I fought to hold them back. You can't just hit me and expect everything to be okay, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of hurt and anger. Sable took a step back, her expression shifting from rage to something that almost looked like regret. I didn't mean to, she mumbled, but her voice lacked sincerity. No, you meant it, I shot back, my frustration finally boiling over. You've been manipulating everything, and everyone around you. Merrick looked between us, his face a mix of confusion, concern, and anger. This is not okay, Sable. You can't treat Lyra like this, he said, his voice firm. The tension in the room was thick, but I felt a small wave of relief that Merrick was finally standing up. But as I looked at Sable, I could see how deeply broken this situation had become. Her face grew cold, and her voice took on an icy tone. I'm done with this, she said suddenly. You think you can just come in here and ruin my life? You're nothing but a spoiled brat. Enough, Merrick shouted, his voice booming. I can't believe this is happening. I thought we could work through our issues, but you've crossed a line, Sable. His voice shook with a mix of anger and disappointment. The weight of the moment settled over us like a dark cloud. I realized then that this fight had gone beyond just Sable and me. It was tearing apart the very fabric of our family, and I wasn't sure if anything could fix it. Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air outside, and my heart began to pound. A police car had pulled up in front of the house. I felt my stomach drop as I processed what was happening. What's going on? Sable asked, her voice shifting from anger to panic. Merrick turned to her, his face filled with disappointment. I don't know, but it looks like someone must have called about the altercation, he said, his tone heavy with regret. As the police officers approached the door, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. The situation had spiraled far beyond anything I'd ever imagined, and all I could do was brace myself for what was about to unfold. The reality of what had happened was sinking in, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. One of the officers stepped inside, his expression serious. Ma'am, we received a report of an altercation. Can you tell us what happened? He asked, looking directly at Sable. Sable's face shifted as she looked at the officer, a hint of panic creeping into her eyes. I didn't do anything, she stammered, her voice trembling. I just had a disagreement with her. A disagreement? Merrick cut in, frustration boiling over. You slapped my sister across the face. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions growing more serious. We'll need to take a statement from everyone involved, one of the officers said. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Sable has been aggressive toward me for a while now. This isn't the first incident, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Merrick looked at me, his eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and regret. Lyra, I didn't want it to come to this. I thought we could work things out. Clearly, that's not going to happen, I replied, feeling a rush of mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to protect my brother, to spare him the pain, but another part of me needed him to understand just how serious this was. As the officers took our statements, I could feel Sable's anger simmering beneath the surface. She glared at me, her voice dripping with bitterness. You're ruining my life. You think you're the good sister, but you're just jealous, she spat, her eyes filled with resentment. Jealous? I replied, my heart pounding. I just want you to be honest with yourself and with Merrick. Once we'd finished giving our accounts, the officers stepped aside to discuss the situation among themselves. The tension in the room was palpable as we waited, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could see Merrick's face, torn between loyalty to Sable and the truth he was finally beginning to see. Sable stood there, her hands clenched, her face a mixture of anger and fear. As we waited for the officers to decide on the next steps, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. This wasn't how I had ever imagined my family would be. I had hoped for a sister-in-law who would bring us closer, not one who would tear us apart. But standing there, with the weight of the past few months pressing down on me, I knew there was no turning back. This night had unraveled everything I thought I knew about my brother and his wife, and as the officers returned to us, I braced myself for whatever was to come. The family we once were was gone, and I wasn't sure if we could ever find our way back. I took a moment to speak quietly to Merrick, my voice soft but serious. Merrick, you have to see how toxic she is. I'm really worried about you. He ran a hand through his hair, looking torn and uncertain. I know things have been difficult, but I love her, Lyra. I just need some time to think, he said, his voice almost pleading. Before I could respond, the officers returned. "Ma'am," one of them said, looking directly at Sable, "we are placing you under arrest for assault." "What? You can't do this!" Sable shouted, her voice rising in pitch, desperate. "It's just a misunderstanding." She continued to protest as the officers cuffed her and began to lead her away. I watched her go, feeling a complex mix of relief and sadness. This was a turning point I hadn't imagined, but maybe it was the only way forward. I glanced at Merrick, and his face was pale, clearly shaken. I could see the weight of everything crashing down on him. "I can't believe this is happening," he whispered, his voice unsteady. "I know it's hard," I said gently, trying to reach him. "But you have to understand, her behavior isn't just a phase. She's been manipulating you, Merrick. She's been pushing me out of your life." The gravity of the moment settled around us as the police car drove away, with Sable inside. A strange sense of finality washed over me, almost as if a heavy door had closed on this chapter. The woman who once seemed so charming had become a source of chaos, and now she was gone. The weeks that followed were intense and filled with challenges. Sable faced serious consequences for her actions. She was charged with assault and later sentenced to 3 years in prison. I watched the toll this took on Merrick. He was left grappling with a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion. We spent countless hours talking through everything that had happened, slowly piecing together the signs of her manipulation that he'd missed. As we processed it all, he began to understand just how deeply she had affected our family and his own sense of self. Throughout this period, Zevin was always by my side, offering support and comfort. His presence made all the difference, and his calm strength helped me heal. One evening, as we sat together in my apartment, he took my hand. "You're incredibly strong, Lyra. I'm proud of how you stood up for yourself," he said, his voice full of warmth. "Thank you, Zevin," I replied, feeling gratitude swell inside me. "I couldn't have done it without you." Reflecting on everything, I realized I had learned some deeply valuable lessons about love, loyalty, and the importance of standing up for myself. I had faced a toxic situation head-on, and I emerged stronger and more resilient than I'd ever imagined. Looking out over the Dallas skyline from my apartment window, I felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. I knew I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I now had the strength to protect myself and the people I loved from toxic influences. Life was mine to shape, and I was finally ready to move forward, feeling empowered, confident, and prepared to start a new chapter, one that was truly my own.
"Did you seriously think you could just move your parents into our house without even asking me, Christopher?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Christopher, my husband of 5 years, looked up from his laptop, his face wearing that infuriating smirk I had come to despise. "Oh, Ava, stop being so dramatic. It's not a big deal. And besides, it's only temporary," he replied casually, as if I didn't have a say in the matter. "And let's be honest, it's not like you can stop it." His words felt like a slap. This wasn't just any house, it was my house. The charming 2-story home, tucked away in a peaceful suburb, had been passed down to me by my grandparents. It was the place where I dreamed of raising our 2-year-old son, Robert, far away from the toxic grip of Christopher's controlling parents. "You do remember this house is in my name, right?" I shot back, my hands trembling as they balled into fists at my sides. My voice was firm, but inside, I felt an overwhelming mix of anger and sadness. For the first time in years, I questioned how well I truly knew the man I had married. Christopher's expression flickered for a moment, his smirk faltering before returning as a shadow of its former self. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Robert toddled into the room, his chubby little hands reaching up toward me with a wide grin. Forcing a smile, I scooped him up, kissed his forehead, and held him close. At least Robert didn't understand the tension suffocating the room. "Christopher, this is not okay," I said, trying to steady my voice as Robert's tiny fingers played with my necklace. "Your parents have never respected me or our space. Why are you doing this now?" "They're family, Ava," Christopher replied with a dismissive shrug, not even looking up from his laptop. "You wouldn't understand." That word, family, mocked me. My family, who owned a small but beloved coffee shop in town, had always been my safe haven. They were warm, loving, and supportive, everything Christopher's parents were not. His mother, Lily, and father, Ethan, had been overbearing and dismissive since the day I met them. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. My stomach sank as I peered through the peephole. There they were, Christopher's parents, standing on the porch with their suitcases, ready to invade our lives. "Fine," I hissed, my voice low enough so Robert wouldn't hear. "Let them in." But this isn't over. Handing Robert to Christopher, I opened the door. Lily swept past me without so much as a greeting, her perfume overpowering the fresh scent of the house. Ethan followed, his usual stern expression making it clear he barely acknowledged my existence, just as he had since our wedding day. In the following days, my worst fears became reality. Lily began asserting control over every aspect of my home. She rearranged my kitchen without asking, criticized my parenting at every turn, and acted as though she owned the place. "This cereal isn't healthy for Robert," she remarked one morning, watching me prepare breakfast for my son. "In our house, we believed in proper nutrition. You should really learn." "It's just cereal," I replied, my voice strained as I fought back the urge to snap. "Robert is perfectly fine." Lily shook her head with a look of disappointment, as if I had committed some grave sin. "You're too lenient. No wonder he doesn't sleep through the night." That evening, I tucked Robert into bed, humming softly to soothe him, when Lily barged in uninvited. "You're still struggling to get him to sleep," she said, her tone dripping with judgment. "Clearly you're doing something wrong." I stared at her, my patience wearing thin. "I'm doing the best I can," I replied, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. "Well, maybe if you had a proper job, you'd have some structure in your life," she shot back with a cold smile. "This stay-at-home routine clearly isn't working for you." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "This is my house, Lily. You're a guest here, don't forget that." She laughed, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Oh dear. Christopher never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here." The next morning, I reached my breaking point when I found Lily in Robert's room, rifling through his drawers. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. "Organizing. This room is a mess," she replied nonchalantly, not even bothering to look up. "That's it," I said, my voice rising as I struggled to stay calm. "I want you out of my house. Now." Lily finally turned to face me, her expression a mix of mock surprise and disdain. "Your house," she sneered. "Sweetheart, this is Christopher's house too. And he wants us here." I stormed out of the room, my thoughts racing. Christopher's betrayal and Lily's arrogance were unbearable. This was supposed to be my safe space, my sanctuary, and it had been turned into a battleground. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I made a decision. I was done being their doormat. If they thought they could walk all over me, they were in for a rude awakening. I didn't know how, but I was going to take back control of my home, my life, and my future. The fight was just beginning, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let them push me around anymore. It was time to stand my ground and take control of my life. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called my brother, Joseph. He had always been my confidant and the person I could rely on when everything felt like it was falling apart. "They're taking over my life, Joseph," I confessed, my voice trembling as tears threatened to spill. "I can't do this anymore. I feel like I don't even belong in my own home." Joseph's voice was steady and reassuring as always. "Ava, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them bully you like this. This is your house, your space. You have every right to demand respect." His words lit a spark within me. He was right. I had been letting them walk all over me for too long. It was time to fight back. This time, I decided, I wouldn't approach the situation blindly. I needed to gather my thoughts and prepare for the confrontation. Over the next few days, I made a list of all the ways Lily had overstepped. The constant criticisms, her intrusion into Robert's routines, her dismissive comments about my parenting, and even her rearranging my kitchen without asking. With each item I added, my determination grew. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. I waited until Lily and Christopher were sitting in the living room, chatting as if nothing was wrong. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm as I stepped into the room. "We need to talk now," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Christopher looked up from his phone, surprised by my tone. "What's this about, Ava?" I took a deep breath. "It's about your parents, Christopher. Their constant interference, their complete disregard for my boundaries. It has to stop. Today." Lily let out a loud scoff, crossing her arms. "This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help." "Help!" I shot back, my voice rising. "You're not helping. You're undermining me at every turn, treating me like a stranger in my own home. This is supposed to be a place of peace for my son and me, but you've turned it into a battleground." Christopher shifted uncomfortably on the couch, clearly not expecting me to confront him like this. "Ava, they're my parents. We can't just ask them to leave." I locked eyes with him, my tone unwavering. "No, Christopher. They're guests in my home, and they've overstayed their welcome. Either they leave or I do. And I'm taking Robert with me." The room went silent, my ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. Christopher's face paled as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Lily, however, was less convinced. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her usual haughty expression cracking. I met her gaze without flinching. "Watch me." That night, Lily and Ethan packed their bags. As they walked out the door, Lily turned to give me one last venomous glare. "You'll regret this, Ava." But as the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The house was mine again, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The following days were surprisingly quiet. Christopher, however, became distant, his interactions with me cold and minimal. It was as if he blamed me for the entire ordeal, even though his parents had been the problem. Still, I found comfort in the peace of my reclaimed home and the sound of Robert's laughter as he played freely again. One evening, as I was tidying up while Robert stacked his building blocks, Christopher spoke up unexpectedly. "I've got a business trip coming up. I'll be gone for a few weeks." His tone was flat, almost indifferent. I could tell our strained relationship had taken a back seat to his career. "Fine," I replied curtly, barely able to hide my relief at the prospect of his absence. After Christopher left, the house felt different. It felt lighter, freer. I began undoing all the changes Lily had made, restoring my home to the way I loved it. Each small victory felt like a step toward reclaiming not just my space but my confidence and independence as well. But then, something happened that I hadn't anticipated. While cleaning one evening, I noticed Christopher's laptop sitting open on the kitchen counter. At first, I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. As I glanced at the screen, I froze. There, in plain sight, were emails that revealed an affair. Christopher had been unfaithful, and it wasn't just a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Anger, hurt, and betrayal swept over me in waves. The man I had once loved and trusted had not only allowed his parents to walk all over me, but had also been living a double life. This was the final straw. I closed the laptop and sat down, my mind racing. I couldn't let this go. Christopher had broken every promise, every vow, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I began planning my next steps, each one carefully calculated. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I explained everything. The intrusion of his parents, the emotional toll, and now the affair. Together, we began the process of filing for divorce and securing my financial standing. Next, I contacted a real estate agent. "I want to sell the house quickly and quietly," I told her, my voice firm. She hesitated. "Ava, are you sure? This is a big decision." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. This house had been my sanctuary once, but now it was a reminder of everything I had endured. I needed a fresh start, somewhere Robert and I could build a life free from Christopher's betrayal and his family's toxicity. Offers came in quickly, and with each one, I felt a sense of liberation. The thought of Christopher returning to find the house sold and his control over my life gone brought me a bittersweet satisfaction. For the first time in years, I felt strong. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was fighting back, and I was winning. After Christopher left, I turned to the one place I knew I could find solace, my family. Reconnecting with them felt like a lifeline in the storm. My parents were appalled when they learned the full extent of Christopher's actions. Their unwavering support gave me the strength I desperately needed. "We're here for you, Ava, no matter what," my father assured me one evening as I sat on the porch, watching Robert toddle around the yard. His innocent laughter was a reminder of what truly mattered. I made a silent vow to protect his happiness at all costs, no matter how difficult the road ahead. Christopher's return loomed on the horizon, but I was no longer the woman he had left behind. The pain and betrayal had hardened my resolve. I was ready to confront him, armed not just with the truth but with a plan to reclaim my life and secure a better future for Robert and myself. When the day finally arrived, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. I had rehearsed this moment countless times, envisioning every possible reaction Christopher might have. Yet, as I heard his key turn in the lock, my heart raced. The door creaked open, and his voice echoed through the now unfamiliar space. "Ava, I'm home," he called out, his tone casual as if nothing had changed. I emerged from the kitchen, my posture rigid and my expression unreadable. "Welcome back, Christopher. We need to talk." He glanced around, his eyes narrowing as he noticed the changes I had made in his absence. "What's going on?" "The house looks different." I didn't flinch. "I sold the house, Christopher. It's no longer ours." His face twisted with disbelief. "You did what?" "You can't just sell our house without telling me." I met his gaze, unwavering. "It's my house, Christopher. And after what I discovered, I don't think you have any say in it anymore." His composure faltered, but he tried to regain control. "What are you talking about?" "The affair, Christopher," I said evenly. "I know everything." For a moment, he was speechless, his face betraying a flicker of panic. Then he scoffed, trying to brush it off. "Ava, it's not what you think." I felt my anger rise but kept my voice steady. "I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me. You betrayed our family." Christopher's shock morphed into anger. "You're overreacting. We can work through this." "There's no we anymore, Christopher," I said, my voice cold and firm. "I've already filed for divorce." I handed him the papers, the weight of the moment sinking in. The ensuing conversation was a blur of accusations, weak apologies, and desperate attempts to shift the blame. But I stood my ground. The man I had once loved was gone, replaced by someone selfish and unrecognizable. As he stormed out of the house, vowing to fight the divorce, I felt a strange mix of liberation and apprehension. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, but I knew the battle was far from over. In the following weeks, the reality of our separation became public. Christopher's parents, who had once been so confident and overbearing, found themselves caught in the crossfire. They tried to contact me, but I refused to engage. I had severed all ties with them, focusing solely on Robert and the legal proceedings. The day of the court hearing arrived with a heaviness that was hard to shake. Christopher sat across the courtroom, looking defeated, the weight of his actions finally dawning on him. As the judge granted the divorce and awarded me custody of Robert, a sense of justice washed over me. Christopher tried to plead for reconciliation after the hearing, but his words meant nothing to me. "You made your choice, Christopher. Now live with it," I said, turning away from him for the last time. The fallout from our divorce and the revelation of Christopher's affair rippled through his life. His reputation suffered, and the social circles his family once thrived in turned cold. Lily and Ethan, once so proud and judgmental, found themselves shunned by those who had once respected them. As I walked out of the courthouse holding Robert's tiny hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. A fresh start for me and my son, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like stepping into the light after years in a dark tunnel. The house, now sold, was no longer a tether to painful memories. My focus shifted to rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop my family had nurtured for years. It became more than just a business. It was my sanctuary and a source of pride. Still, the shadow of Christopher lingered. One evening, as I was closing the shop, I heard a familiar voice. I turned to see Christopher standing there, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I had once known. "Ava, please. I need to talk to you," he said, his eyes searching mine for a trace of the compassion I used to show him. I hesitated, conflicted by the sight of him. "What do you want, Christopher?" I asked, my tone guarded. "It's about the alimony and child support," he began, his voice tinged with embarrassment. I can't afford it. My job." I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Stop right there, Christopher. Your choice has led you here. Robert and I won't suffer because of your mistakes." His shoulders slumped, but I refused to let him manipulate me with his remorse. The sight of him struggling stirred no sympathy, only a quiet resolve to keep moving forward. As I locked the shop and walked away, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My life, my happiness, and Robert's future were no longer tied to Christopher or his family. This was our time to build something new, and I wouldn't let anything hold us back again. "I lost everything because of a scandal," Christopher said, his voice trembling. "And my parents, they're broke too." His words hit like a cold splash of reality. The man who once seemed untouchable was now standing before me, utterly defeated. I crossed my arms, keeping my expression neutral. "That's not my problem, Christopher. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." He took a shaky breath, his eyes pleading. "But Ava, I have nothing left. I'm begging you, for old time's sake." There was a moment, a fleeting moment, where I almost felt pity. His voice cracked, revealing just how broken he was. But then, the memories came rushing back. The lies, the betrayal, the nights I cried myself to sleep because of him. That brief pang of sympathy was drowned out by the anger and pain he had caused. "Old-time sake," I repeated, my voice sharp. "Those times are gone, Christopher. You should have thought about the consequences before you cheated, before you lied." I turned on my heel, ready to leave him standing there, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry, Ava. Truly I am," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I was a fool, and I ruined everything. Please help me." For a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I had once loved. He looked vulnerable, regretful, even human, but the wounds he had inflicted were too fresh, the scars too deep. I couldn't forget how he had betrayed me, how he had turned my life upside down. "I'm sorry too, Christopher," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "But I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own." He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't wait to hear what he had to say. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, a shadow of the man he used to be. As I strode toward the warmth and safety of my home, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. This was closure, not just the end of a chapter, but the end of a story that had caused me so much pain. I had finally let go. The journey hadn't been easy. It had been filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and moments where I doubted myself. But it had also led me to a place of strength and independence. Life didn't stop, it moved forward, and so did I. Robert grew each day, his laughter echoing through the house and filling it with joy. His curiosity reminded me of the innocence and wonder the world still held. The coffee shop became more than just a business. It flourished into a place of warmth and connection, a hub for friends and community. Each morning, the smell of freshly brewed coffee was like a small reminder of how far I had come. As for Christopher and his parents, they faded into the background of my life, becoming distant memories. Their legacy was nothing more than a cautionary tale, a reminder of the damage caused by selfishness and betrayal. I no longer felt anger when I thought of them. Instead, I felt gratitude for the lessons they had taught me. The importance of resilience, the strength to stand up for myself, and the courage to move forward. One evening, as I locked up the shop after a busy day, I looked up at the sky. The hues of orange and pink painted across the horizon were breathtaking, signaling the close of another day. Robert reached for my hand, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine, and I smiled. "Ready to go home, buddy?" I asked, and he nodded with a grin. Our future wasn't perfect, and it wasn't entirely clear, but it was bright. With each step we took, I felt more confident in the path we were forging. It was a new chapter, a life built on strength, love, and the promise of brighter days ahead. As Robert and I walked home hand in hand, I knew one thing for certain. We were moving forward, and nothing would hold us back.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment in the story has touched your heart, brought you some reflection, some emotion, and hope. Thank you for taking the time to experience it with us, and hope that each next story will always accompany you on your life journey.